Howdy friendos, my name is Stuart, and welcome to the last video in our Gravity Falls trilogy. Today I will be looking at my personal favorite character, Stan Pines. If you've not seen our other two videos yet, you should go ahead and check them out now, since it will be important to understand the other two characters before we take a look at this one. Stan Pines, during the majority of Gravity Falls, is an old man in his 60s. He's a con man and a charlatan living in Gravity Falls, Oregon, as the owner of a house called the Mystery Shack. He's a weirdly honest and straightforward character. He is sarcastic, rude, but also thoughtful and surprisingly empathic, even for things he doesn't really understand. Stan, however, holds some secrets that isn't entirely what he seems. As early as episode 1, we see him sneak off into a secret door hidden behind the Mystery Shack vending machine. Unbeknownst to the rest of our characters, Stan is trying to fix a portal left behind by his brother and the author of the Journals of Gravity Falls. This portal, Stan hopes, is the key to getting his brother back, who was pulled into it during an argument they had years ago. Unlike our other two characters, we actually do get to see pretty much his whole life story play out throughout the series, though. In Season 2, during the episode A Tale of Two Stans, we see him at the earliest point in his life as a kid, and we see him grow into an adult with almost no real gaps, even if it is a very abridged storytelling. So unlike Ford, where we have a 30-year gap where we can't account for what we're going to look at, we're going to view Stan from early childhood till the end of the series. As a child, Stan grew up with his twin in New Jersey, where they had dreams of going on big adventures in a boat that they were always fixing up. Since we're starting Stan as a small child, we'll begin him at true neutral. I know we're sometimes inconsistent with kids on the alignment wheel, but we're going to go with the tried and true with this one, at least for Stan. Also, just to address some Xanthars in the room, there's a very popular and very credible fan theory involving Bill, Cipher, and Stan. I'm not going to address it in this preamble since it's not exactly important, but this one is definitely going to be one of those videos that you need to stick around to the post-analysis for, because, well, Stan is the most complicated character in Gravity Falls, and really, if I'm going to do a three-parter talking about these three individuals, I should probably video essay up it a bit more. So this video in particular, you're especially going to want to look at the post-analysis. However, before we go, did you know that you can watch the next 3 alignment videos ahead of schedule by becoming a channel member, a patron, or a Twitch subscriber? Whichever one is most convenient for you, you could just go ahead and do that. Becoming any of these premium members gives you access to the next 3 alignment videos on your select platform and gives you a spot at the end credits of our alignment videos and gaming videos. Each membership also gives you access to another unique set of benefits. YouTube Premium gives you access to stickers and emojis not available anywhere else, and sometimes a 4th bonus alignment video. Patreon gives you access to monthly wallpapers, lore packets, and access to the uncut archive of our D&D campaigns. And Twitch gives you access to a different set of emote stickers and access to our entire streaming library. If you're especially ambitious and want to collect all 3 Infinity Stones of the Loading Crew, this gives you access to a special title in our Discord. It's mostly bragging rights, but hey, you're better than everyone else. Check any of the links in the description to gain access and help support the channel. And with all that out of the way, let's go.
All right, you undead jerks, you ready to die twice? The only wrinkly monster who harasses my family is me!
We begin Stan's life with his brother Ford. They frequently were outside going on adventures and just getting into trouble. You know, kid stuff, neutral.
One of these days, you and me are gonna sail away from this dumb town.
As they got older, their antics got a bit more wild. Ford excelled at academics while Stanley mostly just copied off of him, and they were happy with that system. Whenever Ford got made fun of, Stan would come through and act like a clown to take some of the heat off him. Chaotic neutral and neutral good. Okay, this scene always bothered me. The secretary called
Pines twins to the principal's office.
And then does this very condescending
Not you, him.
to Stanley. Bitch, if you only wanted Ford, why did you call the twins? This is a nitpick, but it's a very contrived scene that only exists to make Stan upset and cause the next set of problems. This could have been handled better. Nat 4 scene? So, I don't know.
And if they are?
Well, then I guess you better come visit me on the other side of the country.
Ford gets offered a place at MIT, but only if he can impress the board with his machine. The night before, in a fit of frustration, Stanley accidentally damaged it, causing it to stop working. Because of this, Ford got rejected by MIT, and this incited the twins' parents to kick Stanley out of their house, saying that unless Stanley can make a fortune, he was excommunicated. Chaotic neutral.
Fine, I'll make millions, and you'll rue the day you turn your back on me.
For the next 10 years, Stanley wandered the world doing whatever he could to make a lot of money. He never really did anything evil like robbing or stealing. He just ran really shady businesses because he didn't have the drive or know-how to make good quality products. And when you think about it, this is doubly unfortunate because it's likely if Ford made anything even remotely commercially viable, Stan could have been the salesman to help him make millions. We're going to give him a chaotic neutral 5 times.
It's okay. He's family. He won't bite.
Who is it? Have you come to steal my eyes?
One day, Ford called Stanley over to his house and showed him the portal he was working on, along with his request to hide his journal and sail to the ends of the earth with it. Stanley, understandably frustrated after not seeing his brother for 10 years, gets frustrated and tries to burn the journal, thinking that not only will it hurt Ford a bit, but it also just kind of handles the problem. They got into a fight, and in the scuffle, Ford got thrown into a portal and was launched into a different dimension. Obviously, Stanley had no intention of having that happen in particular, but since he actively tries to piss off Ford by burning his journal, let's give him a slightly disingenuous chaotic evil.
I didn't get much sleep that night. Or the night after that.
Stanley spent the next few days attempting to turn the machine back on to get Ford back, but eventually realizing that he couldn't do it, he wanted to get some groceries from the store, and when he was short on cash, he decided to take some nosy townspeople up on their offer to give him a tour of the shack. After realizing he had a talent for making people laugh with the silly cryptid stuff, he decided to renovate Ford's house into the Mystery Shack in order to make a living while he worked on the portal in his spare time. He continued this routine for the next 30 years. During that time, he hired Seuss and Wendy, got married and divorced, and became a somewhat controversial but accepted member of the Gravity Falls community. Chaotic neutral and chaotic good. 3 more times?
Mr. Mystery. Boom!
And then there was our great Uncle Stan.
Episode 1, like most episode 1s, is establishing status quo. Stan is a major character in Gravity Falls, so we need to know what his personality is like. Stan accepts Dipper and Mabel into his home and business for the summer. Although he is friendly to them, he does take advantage of their youth and energy sometimes by having them work in his store, do chores, and help him with his tourist trap attraction, chaotic neutral.
My ex-wife still misses me, but her aim is getting better. You see, it's funny because her aim is getting better.
Stan takes the kids to the lake in a genuine attempt to bond over fishing. He even lets them go on a monster hunt without him. Just a cute episode, neutral good.
But enough about me. Behold, me!
While Grunkle Stan is a bigger player in this episode, he isn't really doing anything. Mabel and Dipper discover the remains of a wax museum. Stan reopens it, but the statues are alive and attempt to kill him. They accidentally got the wax figure instead. Stan is completely unaware that any of this went down. Chaotic neutral.
Hello, America. My name is Lil Gideon.
We are introduced this episode to Stan's mortal enemy, a literal child who's just as much of a shyster as Stan. Which is, in any real-world context, both alarming and hilarious. He learns that Mabel is dating him for a hot minute, and he goes to break them up, but then he gets distracted by the idea of a business merger after a potential marriage. He does push for this for a second, but drops it when she says she isn't interested in him. Chaotic neutral.
Couldn't find the remote.
There's an episode where Stan misplaces his remote and refuses to move from his chair and had to watch British dramas all episode. Can't get much more neutral than that.
You did what was right even though no one agreed with you. Sounds pretty manly to me, but what do I know?
Stan has a crush on the local diner lady, Lazy Susan. He spends the majority of the episode attempting to make himself presentable enough to ask her out. He also gives Dipper a legit good pep talk about manliness. Good guy Stan. Neutral good.
Right, like I'm gonna fall for that.
Stan throws a party in the Mystery Shack, and that's it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. He does mention charging an exit fee, but that's clearly a joke. Neutral.
Give me a hand with my car, huh?
Here in 1863, I have never heard tell of a car. What is this magic wheel box?
Come on, Steve. You're a mechanic, for Pete's sake.
It's Pioneer Day in Gravity Falls, and Stan is having none of it. He literally is just trying to get away from the festival, and God, the writers, and the universe itself conspires to make sure he has the worst time possible. Neutral.
I got a job for you two. I printed up a bunch of fake safety inspection certificates. Go slap one on anything that looks like a lawsuit.
This is actually the worst thing Stan has done so far. While hilarious in both writing and tone, Stan holds an insanely cheap and unsafe carnival in his backyard. He rigs a dunk machine and sits on it to exploit the town's hatred of him to swindle them out of their money. Arguably neutral evil since he's cheating people and putting them in danger, but I'm gonna go with lawful evil since he's forging documents and stuff to avoid lawsuits instead of criminal negligence.
You know, studies show that keeping a ladder inside the house is more dangerous than a loaded gun. That's why I own 10 guns, in case some maniac tries to sneak in a ladder.
Stan reveals to Mabel that he has a fear of heights, so Mabel takes him to what basically amounts to extreme exposure therapy. It works well for Stan, but backfires severely on Mabel. Oops, neutral.
You might want to take another look there.
Suck a lemon, little man! How dare you!
Gideon instigates a fight with Stan. Stan just kind of thwarts him casually, but later when he returns with a shrinking light, Stan makes fun of him. There's a part of the episode where Tiny Dipper and Mabel start tickling him, and Stan thinks he's having a nervous breakdown. It's here that we learn Stan doesn't really take this rivalry seriously, and he does a small duty of care towards Gideon. He gently nudges him out of the house and dismisses him. I'm actually going to give this a chaotic good.
You're the light of my life too, pal. Well, have you seen this? Ah, guts! Real, very real guts!
It's a spoopy show, so naturally there's a Halloween episode, and it's great. Stan is trying to trick kids instead of treating them the whole time. The kids who get scared away drop their candy, and Stan shares the spoils with his family. Chaotic neutral.
Cash shower!
Yes!
Mr. Pines, no, you don't need to take your clothes off. No, go to commercial. Go to commercial!
Love this episode. Mabel and Stan make a bet on who can make more money in a single day. The only caveat is that Stan is on vacation and swindles his way onto a game show where he loses everything he made because he couldn't say please. Technically speaking, it's not the best episode of Gravity Falls, but for obvious reasons, it's one of my favorites. Nat 20 episode.
Kids, I think I have a growth forming on my back. Just wanted to be honest with you guys.
Also, this episode is an anthology where the cast fall into a bottomless pit and tell stories. Stan obviously lies to make himself look good. Chaotic neutral.
Yeah, nothing like sitting in a moist tub with strangers. It's like the bus, but wet.
Beach episode. Well, pull episode. Also, it's not an anime, but I'm still counting it. Stan and Gideon compete for the best seat at the local pool. It's unnecessary and silly. Chaotic neutral.
Grunkle Stan, what is this place?
I don't know. Just another room I gotta clean up now.
One week when Mabel had too many sleepovers, Dipper demanded that he get his own room. They go to Stan and complain. Fortunately, a new room was discovered this episode. Stan has them compete for it, but kind of gives up once it gets too weird for his taste. Chaotic neutral.
The pituitary gland. He may be little, but he has big plans.
Holy shit, I forgot about this part. Legit though, I love it when Stan actually has a compassionate man-to-man moments with Dipper. Even though he didn't realize that they switched bodies in this episode, Stan gives Mabel the talk. Unfortunately, he did not realize that his body was being possessed by Mabel, but he did mean well, and it did give Mabel a perspective she probably needed, so neutral good.
Carla's hot pants turned into bell bottoms before I even knew what happened. My memories get a little hallucination-y at the end, but you get the gist.
Dipper suspects Robbie might be controlling Wendy through a magic CD. He was, and Grunkle Stan helped him figure it out this episode. Good Grunkle. Chaotic good.
A unicorn made out of corn. The corn-icorn. I don't know. I'm tired.
In this episode, Mabel's pet pig Waddles is giving Stan a hard time, so he puts him outside for a second even though Mabel asked him not to. Chaotic neutral. Then, suddenly, a pterodactyl swooped down and grabbed him, carrying him off to the sunset, never to be seen again. Stan initially lies about putting Waddles in danger, and then when they eventually go and hunt him down and find the dinosaur, he let it slip what he did. A fight breaks out, but Stan eventually makes up for his actions by rescuing the pig from the ancient beast. Chaotic good.
Do you see? That's why I'm hard on Dipper. To toughen him up, so when the world fights, he fights back.
In the episode that introduced the villain of the series, Stan boots Gideon out of his house when he tries to steal the deed to the shack. Lawful neutral. That's technically the only thing Stan actively did this episode. Unless you count when he subconsciously taught Dipper how to operate in the mindscape like Bill did. If we are, and I think we should for reasons I'll explain in the post-analysis, we'll give him a neutral good.
It's working! Here we go.
I'm kind of blasting past this one since it's a long episode, but here's the long and short of it. At the beginning of the episode, the Pines family attempted to get back the shack, but were rebuked by Gideon's crafty adorableness. He then attempts to send the kids home. Then, seemingly randomly, he got radio interference from microphones and cameras that Gideon hid all around Gravity Falls. Once realizing this, Stan heads to the scene of the crime where Dipper and Mabel were getting publicly shamed, but then revealed to everyone how the pint-sized fraud was pulling everything off. Grunkle Stan gets the deed back along with Gideon's journal, and he also borrows Dipper's that night when he shows it to them. For most of the day, I will give Stan a lawful neutral, since he's actually doing everything pretty much measured and objectively correct. However, lying and borrowing Dipper's journal without proper permission is definitely chaotic good, considering he's making copies for Ford's sake.
30 long years, and it's all led up to this. My greatest achievement. Probably should have worn pants.
We start off Season 2 with a party to celebrate getting back the shack from Gideon. Over the course of the night, Stan gave Dipper back his journal, but shortly is approached by some glowies investigating the energy spike caused by the portal below the shack. Stan tries to play it cool and even tries to play up some of his lesser crimes to distract the agents away from the bigger prize below. The agents eventually leave after inappropriately appropriating Stan's produciaries. Later that night, at the party, Stan attempts to make progress on the portal while, unknowns to him, Dipper raised the dead and summoned a zombie horde. In a very Nat 20 scene, Stan arrives just in the nick of time and protects the kids.
You two, attic, now!
Stan eventually comes clean about knowing about the supernatural stuff of Gravity Falls. During their defense, they learn more secrets from the journals and realize that they can defeat the zombies with show tunes. This has been a very long night, but 2 very well-earned chaotic goods.
Sure are a lot of stars out tonight.
Well, this is getting weird.
For the next 7 episodes, Stan is pretty much removed from the main character status and just becomes a support character. There really isn't much to say except Stan is very helpful and friendly to his family since his business is now booming thanks to Gideon's arrest and that he got the journal to work on the portal. He's still a bit of a scam artist here and there, but he's always kind of honest about it. I'm blasting past it for brevity's sake, but we're going to give Stan 2 chaotic goods for most of Season 2, since all of his chaotic neutrals, like trying to steal an animatronic badger or a witch's watch, would be evened out by the rest of his actions.
You're gonna hear some bad things about me, and some of them are true. But trust me, everything I've worked for, everything I care about, it's all for this family.
Mabel, what if he's lying?
Look into my eyes, Mabel. You really think I'm a bad guy?
He's lying!
So, we're all in agreement that this is a Nat 20 episode, right? Validate my opinions in the comments, please. Anyway, one of the biggest episodes of the show's history, we see that Stan is ending his final stages of his master plan. Throughout the episode, Stan feels guilt about hiding all this information, but is arrested by the glowies. He manages to escape and reach the Mystery Shack basement before the kids could shut down the portal. Throughout the entire time, Stan insists that he's telling the truth, and the explanation at this point is too complicated for what little time they have. He reassures Mabel that he's telling the truth, and she ends up trusting him, resulting in the portal roaring to life, and the real Stanford Pie is emerging. Chaotic good, Nat 20 episode.
Does anyone else know about this portal?
No, just us. Also maybe the entire US government.
The what?
Stan and Ford explain their backstories to the kids, and Seuss, and mind-wipe the feds. While I'd argue getting rid of government agents is always good, the fact that they did it non-violently makes this chaotic neutral.
You give me my name back, and this Mystery Shack junk is over forever. You got it?
You really aren't gonna thank me, are you?
This is actually a massive part of Stan's character. We'll talk about it in the post-analysis. This isn't ding-worthy, but I do want this pointed out. Also, it's important to note that because of the bad blood between him and his brother, we learn that Ford kind of brings out the worst in Stanley. They get into a fight because Ford wants to use the living room for D&D and more D. Stanley wants to watch a children's show. Shameful, really. And in their scuffle, Stanley accidentally causes Ford to drop his infinity-sided dice, which sparks the adventure for the episode. Ford and Dipper get kidnapped, and it's up to Stan and Mabel to save them. With math and imagination. It's a cute episode, and Stan saves the day with cheating. Chaotic good.
Hold it right there, bud. I'm taking you on.
Realizing his life's goal of saving his brother is done, Stan decides he wants to leave behind a legacy and runs for mayor. However, he's, Stan. It doesn't go well. Dipper and Mabel mind control him in order to guarantee his victory, but falls apart in an argument too. The episode culminates in the kids getting kidnapped and nearly blown up, but Stan comes in and saves the day. and is disqualified from mayorship due to his extensive criminal record. Chaotic neutral for the whole thing?
All right, Santiago. You have 24 hours to get these pugs across the U.S. border.
I legit don't understand the joke of this episode. If I had to guess, it's a drug trafficking joke, but like, that's really dark for Stan to take part in. Also, he steals a bunch of unicorn gold that the girls acquired. Let's go with chaotic neutral?
Grunkle Stan, these tips are priceless.
And that's just the tip of the adviceberg.
Okay, so this is actually a fantastic Stan episode. In this episode, Stan and the kids go around Oregon and play pranks on all of the other tourist attractions. These pranks are actually, like, financially destructive, actively damaging their brand. I'm going to have to give Stan a chaotic evil for this. But that is pretty much negated considering how good Stan is with Dipper this episode. Dipper isn't quite over his crush with Wendy, so Stan gives him some advice on how to get over her by flirting with other girls and increasing his confidence. Stan is not quite the lady killer he thinks he is, but the advice he gives Dipper is solid. Plus, it is just flirting. Shenanigans happen, of course, and he gets caught by a she-spider, but at the end of the episode, he comes clean and tells Dipper the hard truth that he's an extremely flawed guy. Chaotic good.
Nobody likes getting older. But just because you're growing up doesn't mean you have to grow up, you know? I mean, look at me. I'm pushing 70 and I still eat ice cream for dinner.
I love Stan. Neutral good.
You'll still have your...
Stan?
Kids?
During Weird Mageddon, Stan retreats to the Mystery Shack and has begun housing refugees. However, he also labeled himself as chief and has begun planning to eat some of the fantasy creatures once the food runs out. He also is incredibly reluctant to help out Ford or attempt to save the world. Let's just go with chaotic neutral, but if you want to say chaotic good since he opened his house to refugees, I honestly wouldn't argue with you.
Between me and him, I'm not always the bad twin.
Between him and me. Grammar, Stanley.
Oh, Grammar Stanley, you stuck-up...
His most egregious sin during this is refusal to join the Zodiac to banish Bill. He did this because he still feels salty about Ford refusing to thank him and bringing him back to his dimension. This escalates into an argument that allows Bill to catch up to them and nearly results in the death of every member of the Zodiac. Chaotic neutral.
The kids are gonna die and it's all my fault. Because I couldn't shake your stupid hand. Dad was right about me. I am a screw-up.
Stanley's finest moment. In a last-ditch effort to save the kids, he and Ford switch clothes and trick Bill into entering Stan's mind, where he holds him back nearly effortlessly. He gives a badass speech about dedication to his family, and seemingly kills Bill and accepts his own memory wipe. Chaotic good, nat 20 scene.
Guess I was good for something after all.
Which immediately undoes his sacrifice. Stan effectively dies when his memory got wiped, but then he came back. I'll talk about this more in the post-analysis, but it's definitely off-kilter.
You think we'll find treasure? And babes?
I'd say there's a high probability.
Summer ends with all of Gravity Falls throwing Dipper and Mabel a farewell party. Stan and Ford gift the Mystery Shack to Seuss, and the twins head off to the world to seek babes and adventure. Overall, a great and emotional ending. I will talk about the Bill statue in the post-analysis, so stick around. Have I said the post-analysis enough?
Kids, you knuckleheads were nothing but a nuisance, and I'm glad to be rid of you.
Stan Pines, as I mentioned earlier, is the most complicated and in-depth character in Gravity Falls, but honestly, a lot of his most important traits can be boiled down to a few things. 1, Stan feels unappreciated. Throughout his entire life, Stanley was told he wasn't good enough by his parents, his teachers, and even his family that he actually likes. He's been constantly underestimated as though he is lesser because he isn't traditionally as smart. 2, Stan is honest. And this is a really odd trait to give a swindler and someone who shoplifts and who isn't afraid to commit crimes, but Stan at no point is sneaky or directly deceptional. He always is upfront about what he wants and what he plans to do, and to the point where he openly bribes and admits to federal agents what his shortcomings are. 3, Stan cares more about others than himself. There are multiple times throughout the series where Stan is called selfish, and while it's debatable at how he handles his romantic life, he never actually does too much that is exclusively self-serving. Stan dedicated a majority of his life to helping and supporting his brother, and it's unfortunate that each of his mistakes and bumblings punished him so severely. And this is where I come back to the Bill Cipher theory. There is an extremely credible theory, to the point where it's practically canon and confirmed by Alex Hirsch himself, that Stan Pines is the reincarnation of Bill Cipher. During his death throes, he calls out to a cosmic axolotl, and he says some prayer to save his own soul.
Hey, XOLOTL! My time has come to burn! I invoke the ancient power that I may return!
And while I really dislike this writing choice, if you think about it, it does make a lot of sense thematically and poetically. In Bill Cipher's backstory, he was a freak of nature that accidentally caused the destruction of his own universe, and specifically mentioned several times in the lore that his own family was ruined by his mistakes, just like Stanley was. Bill then met Stanford, and both Bill and Ford admitted that they were once friends. Ford said,
I used to think he was my friend.
and Bill even said,
Everyone, this Armageddon wouldn't be possible without help from our friend here.
Granted, Bill was probably being sarcastic, but he did offer Ford a place in his gang, which is very important. The prayer and the pact with the axolotl is basically Bill's second chance at life in order to do right by the world and by his family. So, in a sense of poetry that rhymes, it's kind of fitting that the creature that doomed a universe and his family turned into a new family and a new universe's ultimate hero. It's a stretch, admittedly, but it does work well in our alignment chart here, with Bill being chaotic evil and Stanley being chaotic good. And it also doesn't quite fit in with the Bill statue lore and that little scavenger hunt that was held by Alex at the end of the show. But it does kind of wrap up the series nicely and turn Gravity Falls into an interesting dive into the relationship of two wildly different beings, that being Stanford and Bill. Again, I don't really like the Bill reincarnation theory, but it does add up. Also, this three-parter was fairly exhausting. If you guys could hit that subscribe button and share the video around, that would be great. Thank you. Thank you to the patrons, and I'll see you next time.
Hey, it's everyone's favorite Grunkle again. If you like this video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell button. Maybe check out the Patreon and see some more cool stuff that's happening behind the scenes. Stanley, help! That giant squid we killed had children, and they've come back for revenge. They want my tasty human organs. Quick, fetch me another harpoon gun. Duty calls. Time to get back to what I love doing. Come here, you eight-legged weirdos. Forget living in the sea, because I'm gonna put you in the ground.